Iran succeeds and Iran gains influence in the region and gains power by simply surviving and keeping the strait closed. And by that measure, they are succeeding here. And I had an analyst say to me yesterday, they think Iran has already won this war. They have stood up to the United States, taken control of the Strait of Hormuz, and not given an inch yet so far in most negotiations.
And to that point, David, in terms of who's winning the war, President Trump, entered this conflict with a state of war goals, aims for what were to happen. Now, he wasn't very clear about spelling them out. He certainly never issued a real address to the American people. But, we did learn what he and his administration hoped to accomplish. I know you have taken some time here looking at that. Please explain to us what exactly he did get done.
So, again, part of this was this 3-month mark to look at these things. The clearest definitions of success and the clearest summary of goals was that late night address from Mar-a-Lago on February 28th. And he set out, several things, about 5 things. They were to destroy Iran's Navy. That has happened, but they only achieved that partially. It's large surface ships that have been destroyed. Iran still has hundreds of these smaller fast boats that can lay mines. The U.S. just attacked several of them several days ago. They have raised, as you can see in this graphic, they did achieve raising their missile industry, blowing it up. So it's much harder now for them to produce more missiles. What they did not achieve was destroying all their missiles. As you can see on the list, they have 70% of their missile stockpile left, according to intelligence assessment. And this issue of proxies in the region, there's no progress at all. Hezbollah is fighting Israel right now and not backing down. None of these negotiations address also their proxies in Iraq, and most importantly, the Houthis, who have shown they can shut down sea routes on their own, and then ensure Iran does not have a nuclear weapon. No progress there. The Iranians are insisting they won't agree on anything regarding a nuclear weapon. And a 6th goal was this part at the end of that speech where he called on the Iranian people, the great people of Iran, to rise up and take control of their government. The president hasn't mentioned goal number 6, but that's because, sadly, nothing has happened. The Iranian people now have a more hardline regime ruling over them, and they're in a dire situation in terms of food and other basic supplies.
So, Frank, let's piggyback off of what David just went through, and frankly, what a number of our colleagues have written in The Atlantic in recent days. Whenever this war does end, and there's no guarantee it's going to be anytime soon, but when it does, it is very difficult to imagine a scenario where the United States can credibly assess the victor. Donald Trump, of course, will declare victory. He will. He always does. Yeah. But yet, coming out of this, it would appear that not only were not these war aims accomplished, but the United States projects to the world in a much weaker way than when the war began.
Right. It seems like one of the primary Iranian goals at this point is to deny Trump that credible claim of victory. And what they've shown is that the United States is a superpower who could be waited out. The full force of our air power was deployed on Iran. And, not only, as David has shown, very few of our objectives were actually achieved, but in the course of this patience, Iran has been able to undig a lot of its missile sites from the rubble, that they are at something like, I think, 70% of their pre-war capacity when it comes to their missile capabilities, which is extraordinary given the munitions that were dumped on those sites. And you look at the way that this has played out. You look at the way, of course, that China and other countries are observing this, and they've seen how asymmetric warfare is an incredibly viable tactic against the United States. And they've seen the way in which there are limits to U.S. power and limits to U.S. will. And despite the fact that we engaged in this campaign, we are unwilling to put boots on the ground. We're unwilling to risk American life in order to achieve the objectives. And Iran has emerged from this war with new strategic advantages over the United States that we seem totally perplexed about how to manage.
David, I wonder if you could talk about what has not been achieved in this list and sort of where America is with that.
The missiles are a real issue, and I've had people in the region raise this to me, and that these are the missiles like the one they fired at Kuwait last night, and that Iran has shown an ability to destroy the energy infrastructure in Saudi Arabia, in Kuwait, in the UAE, and all these places. And just one separate thing, I think the president's increasingly frustrated. The fact that he threatened to blow up Oman, as was shown in that clip, that's a brand new demand if they somehow cooperate with Iran. But Oman is a long-term ally of the United States. And then this also, this demand that all the countries in the Gulf, the majority Muslim countries, agree to the Abraham Accords, agree to ending, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict that's existed for decades. The president's statements, particularly yesterday, just have further complicated these negotiations. So they have not achieved several things, as we talked about, and things seem to be getting worse in terms of what the president's saying in public.
You go down the list. Regime change, certainly not accomplished. The Strait of Hormuz, even more in Iranian control than before. And the uranium has not been addressed. And it does seem like President Trump, I agree with the assessment and wrote about how frustrated he seems, including this last-ditch effort over the weekend, this out-of-nowhere effort to expand the Abraham Accords and to threaten U.S. allies in the Gulf, saying, well, we're not going to be part of an Iran peace deal unless you sign on to his initiative here. And that, of course, has received a very tepid response so far. Trump seems to be spinning his wheels. Unclear where to go next. MS Now senior national security reporter David Rohde. David, thank you as always. That new piece available to read online now.